of me when the rest of me is disassembling, and that it isn't realistic or fair for someone who hasn't experienced my level of trauma to meet me at the point of compassion I need. I almost always only ever experience that from someone who knows what I've gone through or something similar. But back then, what I was trying to do was experience grief alone. I felt guilty for being a burden on my friends and family, and I had no home for this anger that burned through my life. At the time, I felt I had the answers to everything, when all I had was the answer to my pain in that precise moment. The lens of retrospect is always so unreliable, but I'm convinced that the thing that would have tempered my anger would have been community. But when I wrote the book, it was before I properly connected with my grief community through Instagram, and it was before I discovered the powerlifting community, which is so attuned to mental health and building support networks. I thought the solution to my grief was to take myself away from people, and it wasn't. Despite that, a lot of what you're listening to in the book has still aged well, I think. A core part of the book is unraveling the narrow ideals that society sells you, that you need to find and meet someone romantically in order to fix your loneliness or lack of resonance you feel in the world. I've learned that romantic love can only amplify what you already have, and if you are funneling someone's validation and love into a void that only you can really fill, it doesn't set you up for when things go wrong. It doesn't teach you to reach out and prioritize other types of connection. I still believe we could all benefit from asking ourselves fundamental questions about our lives and how we choose to live it. However, I also know that you won't get all of those answers by going to a remote lagoon or a solo holiday. While being out in those spaces of silence was essential, just to have room to think and connect with Rob, my grief, and the vastness of our planet, it was only a small part of the process. The answers to these things are ongoing and almost always are found by being around people, diversifying our friendship groups, the people we work with, and learning, evolving, and expanding our thought processes. When a creature goes through ectasis, they feel very vulnerable. They might hide themselves away, and that's due to survival. Their skin, quite literally, is at its thinnest. It was the same when I wrote this book. I didn't realize that I was changing, shifting, and that the process would feel destabilizing and unmooring. When I came back to the UK after my travels in 2018, I accidentally fell into powerlifting, and that gave me a structure and community I needed when everything still felt so raw. It was life-altering, but in truth, I was still being overly controlling about how much I did, who I socialized with, and how I organized my life. It wasn't until the pandemic happened that I realized that while I was doing so much better with my grief, I had completely eliminated spontaneity and therefore a key element of joy and hedonism. Once lockdown ended, I decided that I was, within reason, going to do everything and try everything I possibly could. I didn't want to lose any more time to grief, and I didn't want to spend any more time staying at home under the illusion it was safe. This newfound zest for life led me to falling in love with the first person I met since Rob, something I felt was impossible in those first few years. It sadly didn't last. It led to me making new friends and going on holiday with them, the first girl group I'd been in since university, and it led to me realizing I didn't want children and it wasn't a sad or unhappy decision. The investment that I make in myself, not just things like therapy or support groups, but things that actively generate joy, means that I'm not just healing from grief, but that I'm in love with my life. I'm also acutely aware that none of this would have been possible without this former version of me. I hold so much love for her, this wild woman who took herself to the west coast of New Zealand, surrounded by nothing but the blue sky of the southern hemisphere, her feet buried in black sand and the booming ocean in front of her, and yelled, "I love you, Rob," at the shoreline. But also that trip